Hi, our guest today is Zachary Taylor, who's the finance director for the town of Milford. My co-host Al Holman's not here today. Zach, I know you're really busy today. Thanks for taking time out.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me in. It's a pleasure to be here.
So the town budget passed at annual town meeting is almost $100 million.
Yes, it is. My operating budget was the highest that it's ever been. It's a record year. It's just under $96 million. Very much having to do with principal and interest from bonding the Woodland School coming on board, which that was around $2.7 million directly coming into the operational budget. So very large impact. However, we've been planning this for quite a while now. If you can believe it, it's around 5 years in the making now with the Woodland School project.
Just the financing of it.
Just the financing alone. So I feel like this was just happening yesterday with the feasibility study and appropriating $1 million at town meeting, and then going in front of the selectmen and having to tell them that we can afford a $60 million school, and praying that I was right. And here we are now in excellent position, able to handle this very large amount of debt that's coming on, and handle it better than we anticipated.
Yeah, let's get into that for a minute. So 5 years ago, a projection was made on assumptions, basically, on how the numbers would work out.
Correct.
And what Mark Shane, the chairman of the Finance Committee, has said at both FinCom meetings and at the town meeting was things came in so much better than planned that the stabilization fund, which is the town savings account, is actually not going to be drawn down as much as was once thought.
Correct.
So there's about 17 million in long-term savings right now.
Correct.
And Mark recently said that if you keep putting $500,000 in a year, when you get done about 10 years out, you're still going to have 17 million.
Yeah.
Even though you're withdrawing millions a year.
That's absolutely correct.
Not a bad position to be in.
It is not. I can address some of those assumptions of why we're in a better position if you'd like.
Sure.
All right, so right off the bat, again, we're talking 4 or 5 years ago, so there's no way of accurately predicting what kind of interest rates are going to happen in the future.
And the assumption was what, 5%?
If I could do that, I would be in a different position. But at the time, we went with 5%. Again,
and it came in at 2.3 something?
Correct. Incredible. That's less than half right off the bat. So that's really number one of what's driving it. Number two, at the time, we didn't know what the full cost of this project was going to be. We didn't know what kind of reimbursement we would receive from the MSBA. Certain things are ineligible. We've been very lucky and haven't had many ineligibles, so we're kind of receiving the maximum grant allowance, as they call it. So again,
so what are we getting back? About 33 million, 27? Do you know the number where we're close to?
As actual reimbursement,
yeah.
32 and change, we'll call it 33.
When this is all
million.
done next year?
When this is all done, yep.
Okay.
So the actual project came in a little less than anticipated, and we're going to maximize our state reimbursement, as well as about 2 years ago now, we moved forward with myself specifically stating that we would like to stick with 28 million. To bond, and we did. So I'm very proud of myself that we're able to hit that target. Now, that does mean that there is going to be a portion that we will have to square up on, as I call it, of potentially 1.5 million. You know, we're either going to do that through a stabilization withdrawal, or what more than likely may happen, a portion of it will be applied through raise and appropriate to hit the levy this particular year, because we are now going to be extracting from stabilization, which will be a general fund receipt.
But that's the difference, though. The cost you're talking about is the difference between the amount that was bonded, the 28 million, and the actual town's cost of the school. So
Correct.
It's like a 1.5 million gap in there.
Correct.
But starting next year, we're paying off that 28 million.
Correct.
Or is it this year?
Nope, it's starting in FY17.
Okay,
We
so
will-
this
we will
fiscal
be.
year.
Yep. Now, also, I know you had our treasurer, Chris Pillar, in on a previous show, but what I believe you guys talked about, I'm not sure, but we stuck with 28 million because we knew that right now the market for bonds is generating rather large premiums,
And you got almost,
$1.9 million.
right, and after cost, it was 1.6
Correct.
roughly?
Yep, correct.
Which
So
still, it staggers my imagination that a financial institution basically paid the town 1.6 million for
Oh.
the right to let you borrow money from them.
that's absolutely right. It seems like why it doesn't seem
Doesn't happen when we
appropriate,
go for a
but-
mortgage, does it?
No, it doesn't. I wish it did, but you're absolutely
Hey,
right.
I want to
That-
borrow 300,000 for a house.
Here's 400.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
You know, he's 50,000 towards it. No, it doesn't work
It
that way.
doesn't work that way.
But
yeah.
they also found out that's because A, they wanted the note,
Correct.
they bid against it,
Yep.
and we're a good credit risk.
Exactly. So it was very safe to say, hey, we're still going to make some money off of Milford, and they will.
8 million in interest over 20
They
years.
will. They'll make money. So it's a safe bet. And the higher the premium, the more desirable it would be for us to pick that institution. So that's where they kind of bid
Right.
each other. And this isn't their first rodeo. They're in competition, all these different institutions with each other. So
Right.
this particular one, that's where they went. And we jumped all over it. It was
Yeah.
a no-brainer.
Yeah, now let's switch gears for a minute.
Sure.
We got through the annual town meeting. The other half of the town's annual finances is the fall special town meeting.
Correct.
What do we anticipate happening there?
Okay. In my opinion, that's the big meat and potatoes of town meetings will be
Right.
our October special. As you know, other towns, you can have as many as you want. We classically have two.
But you put money into stabilization fund there usually every year.
Correct. So
You set
this
aside money to lower the tax rate.
correct. Yep.
You pay for capital goods.
You just named my 3 goals and objectives that I described.
I was going to say, is there anything else?
There's a couple other ones, one of which is going to be what we just talked about with applying at least $1 million to directly to the capital project of the Woodland School. So that's going to happen, which I have planned, have set aside. And even considering that, we still have 1.8 million of taxpayer relief built in, which is also targeted excess levy capacity. So we have that built in. We do, in fact, as you said, have stabilization contribution built in as well. But what more than likely will happen is we also will be using stabilization withdrawal. So we're going to end up netting it. So
Right.
why put in 500 and take out 800? We'll just take out the 300. So that's more than likely what's going to happen. But it's going to be quite interesting this year because when we do a stabilization withdrawal this year, it's going to replace the classic taxpayer relief via free cash. So instead of using free cash, we will be using stabilization or a combination of both.
Then where does the taxpayer relief come from?
It's built right into the levy. So this particular year, even in past years, and this is what's really hard for most people to understand.
Well,
so
the whole idea of a levy limit is sort of like, okay, I think I got it, but I mean, I know what it is, you know what it is.
Yeah.
It's very hard to explain to people.
It certainly is. I'll try to do my best right now. But so one
The levy limit is the highest amount the town can raise in taxes
correct.
through Prop 2.5 and some other factors.
Governed by Proposition 2.5
And some other factors.
and some other new growth. And,
Right.
And I got to say, new growth in this town has been outstanding over the past decade, and
Right.
all indications show that it's going to continue to be great. So that's one of the big factors, in my
So
opinion.
you have that, and what you mean is Milford is not taxing up to the limit that under the law it can.
That it legally
Which
can.
that gives the people the taxpayer relief, because like the town I live in definitely taxes almost as
Correct.
high as it could go every year.
Yep, and you've gone beyond too through ballot override, correct, right?
Oh, most towns
Yeah.
do. Milford
So
doesn't have to.
we've never had, and that's one of those don't want to say type of words in my industry here. And
Debt exclusion and override.
Yeah, let's keep away from them. But we're in an excellent position, and I don't see any need to do so. Which is why it was so brilliant of this town to be putting such large contributions into
Into stabilization.
stabilization. Which again, that was another one of those factors, and we talked about why we're in a better position.
Right, but let's look at that for a minute.
Sure.
If, as Mark Shane said, 10 years from now, you're going to have the same 17 million in there. Basically, though, you have enough sitting in there now to get rid of some major, major capital expenses for cash
We could.
with no borrowing.
We could.
I mean, if you're taking out of there, say you take 8 million out of the current stabilization, you still have 9 million.
Yep.
You could take 5 million of that, fix Godfrey Brook.
We could.
You could fix Middle School East. You could
could.
do a lot of things in cash.
And I would think that something like that in the next couple of years is probably going to happen. We'll see.
Or do you think there's going to be a department rush for, I want this and I want that and I want that?
I hope not. I mean, I'm the finance director, obviously, so
And you still
any-
need to have that savings level, because that's one of the reasons why you got the good bond rate. is
Exactly.
You had that money sitting there.
exactly. If you
So you can't spend all of it.
if you recall, right prior to the last town meeting, which was the last one prior to us bonding,
Right.
we made it clear that we want to do one last whammy, a real big contribution, and I believe it was around $4 million. So
Right.
that's a huge stabilization contribution, but trust me, it very much helped when we went to bonding. And if you actually, I
Right,
believe
so while you
had
have a lot of money, you also just can't spend it down,
yeah,
because the higher the stabilization is, the lower the town's interest rate in borrowing.
correct. And the other thing that a lot of people overlook as well is they think, like, why do we have this huge amount of stabilization on the books? And my response recently has been, we got some huge liabilities on the books outside of even debt.
Pension obligations
pension and
things like
OPEB.
that.
I mean, and me and you have talked a lot about OPEB, and I am not a
Other
fan of it.
post-employment
Other
benefits.
post-employment benefits, referring to the health insurance of retirees after they've retired from the town. We are obligated to pay them. We made promises, and we do pay them. And we pay them as we go, so that's why I'm not a big fan of that whole liability. However, it's a reality. It is here. My reaction to it is meaningless. We still do have this
But
liability.
you are
It's
making
on
a
our
payment,
books.
you are making a payment against that every year.
Yes, we are. So we do a pay-as-we-go, which is our current obligation per year, as well as built into our operational budget is $600,000 per year. Now, I frequent meetings all the time. I'm big in the association. I go to a lot of these things and see the presentations. And you look across the room, and trust me, nobody is having these built into their operational budget. The way it's usually handled is, hey, we got a little bit of free cash.
Let's throw it against that
let's-
this
let's-
year.
Let's put 10 grand at our $60 million liability, and it does nothing. It's pointless. But 600 grand over a number of years, it's a step in the right direction. It's still significantly less than if the state ever mandated it, but
Yeah.
we're in decent position even there. So
Okay, well, we've got about, your time is limited today. We've got about a minute left with you. What do you want to talk about?
let's continue with October.
Okay.
So again, I think this is going to be a real interesting October to come up. Again, we're in a really cool, unique position right now. So
There
we got
also, I
this
believe, is 2 million budgeted for capital projects
1.5 we have.
All right, 1.5.
But keep in mind,
versus the usual one.
versus the usual one, but keep in mind, that's budgeted at the levy level. So I expect to have a pretty decent free cash year again. So it could be upwards of $3+ million again. Now that can be used for whatever, hence free cash. So just because we budgeted 1.5 doesn't mean that we can only do 1.5. I think it's smarter to look at it and say, this is our resources, let's maximize our benefit. And
So you have a 5-year capital project list, and if the thinking today is, here's 1.5 million takes us here on the list, what you're saying is, let's go out a little further,
may be wise.
if you have the money.
If not only that, but you will never see me say spend money to spend money. So if a project's not necessary, it's still not necessary. I
Right.
would never say, let's move it up and let's pay for it. It'd be smarter to put it into stabilization, because remember, we have our short-term capital account.
Right, well, I haven't seen Milford just put money into things that
Typically doesn't happen.
don't make sense.
We have a real good
But there are
finance
long-term
committee, so-
things, like, Godfrey Brook could eat up 10, 12 million just to fix the whole length of it.
Yeah,
But that's not silly, that's just something needed at the
that's
time.
something necessary, and it may be wise that we look at that and say, let's get it off our plate. So,
But there's road repairs, there's all sorts of
Yeah.
demands on it, so you don't really know.
exactly. So again, I think it's gonna be a pretty interesting October to come
Now,
up.
the sewer department got approval to borrow, I believe, $3 million for its new sludge thickening facility, and that's a
Yes.
whole nother thing to explain to people what that is. However, that money comes out of the sewer account or the town's account?
Nope, what happened, so it's a $5.2 million project. They have a sewer stabilization fund.
Where they took 2 million out of.
Yep.
Or three.
3.2. We took the 3.2 out.
3.2 out of there, but they're gonna borrow 2 million.
Correct. Potentially borrow 2 million. So this project's gonna be at least 2 years. So this time next year, we may, depending on how this current year goes with their retained earnings, which they've been doing very well, like we've been doing, having great free cash. They have freed up
Without a
money.
rate increase in 8 years. I might
Correct.
add.
Yeah, they have. They haven't increased their rate, so it's been great. We have an envious enterprise fund. Trust me, because as I referenced with being in the association, you go around the room and look at their enterprise funds, and none of them have $6 million in stabilization for the enterprise fund. That's crazy. So
Well, a lot of that came from Hopkinton, so.
yes, it did. There was some big money coming from there, so we kind of lucked out there. But because of proper fiscal policy and what we wanted to do, we're now able to potentially handle this $5.2 million upgrade with cash that the sewer had built. So really cool stuff.
Which
So-
is really fixing a plant that's now beyond its technical age of living, so they're fixing a major part of it. And the rest of it, they've been
correct.
keeping up to date with through their
Yeah,
own annual expenses.
And as I understand it as well, this should pay for itself also. So.
Actually, it will, because basically, the easiest way to explain it is, the town is paying to truck away what's left after you clean the water,
Yeah.
and looks like soil, but it's wet.
Mm-hmm.
The heavier it is, the more you pay,
Correct.
and the sludge dewatering facility will lower the water level by 50% of what's in there, which means it costs you less to truck it away and get rid of.
Absolutely.
Or you can take twice as much for the same amount. So,
Absolutely.
anyway, your time's up.
Yes, it is.
I wish we had more time
I'll
today.
I'll gladly come back at another time. We
We'll
can
get you back at
continue.
another time.
Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.